No. I want to officially welcome Rabbi Gorman to Tzeh ulmad Chumash Chabur. I'm sure he's heard about it so much and he couldn't wait to come in. But those who live in the neighborhood, and I refer to Sultana, Rabbi Gorman is a mashpia in Lubavitch Yeshiva here at the corner of Lawrence and Bathurst. But for those of us in the corner, he's already world famous. Baruch Nussbaum kept asking me, maybe ask for.
Why does he live on Sultana?
Lives on Sultana. He's next door neighbors to Dave Zolti?
Next door to Yankee Gellis, which is next door to Dave Zolti.
Right. Imagine Yankee Gellis has such a Lubavitch neighbor. Now you know he wants to move to Lakewood. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So.
Sorry? Baycrest has spoken Russian, yeah. When Baycrest was still open for the public, yes, I think. Now they did over the whole place, and they, with corporate penny savings in place, they put light sensors throughout all the hallways. Yeah.
So Shlomi is sponsoring Yilul Nishmas, his mother. Isha Ksheira Tznuah V'Chasuda. You don't have to go to the feld tomorrow. Every word on the Matzeva is true. Right? Maras Rivka, Bas Reb Menachem Mendel Alevi, Esh Reb Simcha Moshe Goldreich, Rochash Liva Tomid Avasemes, V'Akaras Atoy B'Chol Yodea, B'Munasa Atoyra Dovka Al Aft Lo'iseha, her troubles, B'Mei Ashoya, Hit Shashem Shomayim B'Tzniusa, Mufleges B'Chol Yifasea, Kimedors Yisharim, Mamshichem Islos Chayea, Nifter L'Beis Shalom V'Shem Tov Er Shabbos Kodesh. Iyar, just like now. Shemim of Vegasar and Neshoma should have an aliyah. She was an independent woman. Everybody read the note. The reason why I use the word independence because it happens to be Iyar today. So it's a muted reference to the day in Eretz Yisrael.
Was in large letters. Minus percent.
And Refuah Shalema for our neighbor Nachum Mendel ben Sarleh and his Rachmi Shamayim. And also on Regina, actually, it was on Regina.
So they say two neighbors, Yiddish neighbors, one a Turkarte, Nick, and the other one is a Mizrachist. They meet tomorrow morning, and he says,
Samsonovich likes it already.
he says, the Turkarte tells the Mizrachist, he says, we got something in common today. So the guy looks at him, startled. He says, explain. He says, what do you mean, the Dego? The guy's shocked. He says, what do you mean, we got something in common? He says, yeah, just one small difference. By you, it's Hanocha Oisa Mitzvah, by us, it's Hadloka Oisa Mitzvah. So, Al Kapanim, Ish, everyone in their own way. The Vadshich haben Liebe l'Shemaim. So, this week's parsha opens up. The Eibishter says, "Daber el kol adas b'nei Yisrael." Right? That and Kedoshim Tiyu ki Kadeshani. So this is a unique introduction, which exists. I think the only other time was by the Tzivui of the Mishkan, was Daber al Kol Adas B'nei Yisrael, because the Gemara says, and Rashi brings it down. In Chumash, Rashi brings down that generally the Seder Hadvarim of relaying the mitzvahs of the Eibishter was that the Eibishter would speak to Moshe Rabbeinu the ulmad. Moshe Rabbeinu would call an Aaron HaKohen. Then Aaron HaKohen would be the two sons, Shnei Bnei Aaron. Then afterwards the Skenim, and then afterwards all the Yidden. That would be the general approach of communicating Torah mitzvahs to Bnei Yisrael. And here we find something unique. Israel. This is a mitzvah which was given to everybody in all equals. No one's different, no exceptions, no one's higher, no one's lower. And the Alshich picks up on this, and he says that the reason for this is because generally when people have a mitzvah to be kedoshim, to be holy, so people generally run away from this. So I'm shaykh to kedusha. Come, perhaps I should be shaykh to kiyum mitzvahs maisius like a pashta yid. Kedoshim tiyu. I should be heilig. I should be. It's something which is rachik from me. So the Eibishter says, no. This is no one's absolved. No one is. Everyone is equal when it comes to the mitzvah of kedoshim tiyu to be in a oifen of kedusha. Generally speaking, kedusha would be. We say the Ariya Kodesh, say the Orechaim HaKodesh, the Alshach HaKodesh, refer to holy people, lofty people. Kedusha generally is it leaves the impression that you hear when you speak about kedusha as someone who is separated, devoid from involvement in the Tanugei Olam Hazeh. That's what kedusha means to most of us. And there's a mitzvah. The mitzvah is the beginning of the parsha. And then once again at the end of the parsha, the mitzvah is again kedoshim tiyu ki kadashani. A repeat of the mitzvah, and it's repeated 5 or 6 times in the Torah, the mitzvah that the Yidden have to be kedoshim. And so that's a mitzvah, it's a tzivui, all equals to all bnei Yisrael. And the question is, what's the meaning behind the mitzvah? Because when I take a look in the parsha, it's a tremendous parsha, 51 mitzvahs is collected in this week's parsha, Parshas Kedoshim. And the question is, so, but what is the meaning behind the mitzvah of Kedoshim Tiyu? I mean, when I look inside the mitzvahs in this week's parsha, it's not to steal, not to lie. You have mitzvahs of you have mitzvahs of Kalayim, mitzvahs of Arlonet Revai. You have, but these are nothing in the mitzvahs which seem to be a lot of practical mitzvahs. Many of the mitzvahs ben adam lamokim, very basic, humane, human mitzvahs. Nothing which really highlights as kedoshim tiyu to be kadosh. The question is, what taka does it mean to be kadosh? So the Rishonim talk about it, and the Ramban talks about it, and the term of kadosh in Lashon HaKodesh also has a meaning kadosh muvdal, right? And so to kadosh muvdal means that one has to be separated and a bit higher than regular. In other words, you have people are engaged and involved in Yana Olam Hazeh. I eat, I drink, and I live. We're in a world, a human world, but does that mean that I have to be bogged down in the Tanuga Olam Hazeh? No, the mitzvah, it's a mitzvah of prisha, to be prushim, to be separated from the mitzias of Olam Hazeh, not to be too involved in Tanuga Olam Hazeh. And the Ramban actually brings a dugma lazeh. He says a nazir, right, is also called kadeshu, right? Because a nazir is someone who refrains from Tanuga Olam Hazeh. And that's obviously absolutely true. And that's one dimension of Kedusha. But is that the ultimate dimension of Kedusha? That's what we want to take a look at, because Chazal say about a Nazir, which was the dogma that the Ramban gives, Chazal say about a Nazir that a Nazir needs to bring a carbon after his Nazirus. And he needs to bring a carbon because he needs a kapara, he needs to be forgiven. Forgiven for what? Chazal say, because Dayach Masha Asra Torah. Is it not enough with the Torah?
No, how to get
You have to answer upon yourself even more. So there's obviously a dimension of being a little bit removed from Tanuga Olam Hazeh, but there's an element of not being that way to an extreme. As a matter of fact, Parshas Kedoshim follows up with what? Follows up from from Parshas Achrei Mos. And Achrei Mos, the pasuk says, Achrei Mos shnei bnei Aaron, v'karvosam lefnei Hashem v'yamusu. So earlier, there's the Chazal and Medrash brings kama timing, various different reasons why Nadav Avihu actually passed away. But here in the pasuk refers to that the fact that they passed away was b'karvosam lefnei Hashem v'yamusu. And there's the famous Eiracham HaKadosh on the beginning of Parshas Achrei Mos, and he explains what was the reason why they passed away was b'karvosam lefnei Hashem v'yamusu. The fact that they got close to the Eibishter to an extent beyond where they should have gone. In other words, they had such a ava v'chiba, and the Chaim uses a bunch of synonyms for the connection and the ava and the excitement and the dveikus and the Rebbeinu Shalom, to the point that they got so close to the kedusha that they had kalois hanefesh, that the neshama could not be contained in their body no longer. And that was the reason why they passed away. In other words, they passed away b'karvosam lefnei Hashem v'yamusu. They got so close to the kedusha that their neshama couldn't be contained inside the body. They had such a gilu oir of kedusha of the Rebbeinu Shalom in the Kodesh HaKadoshim that the neshama, the nefesh, couldn't be contained inside the physical body any longer. Which is an expression of, this is, they're commanded right away. There was the command that they're not allowed to go in B'chalei Salah Kodesh anymore, because this was something which was not what the Eibishter wanted, right? Like the Alter Rebbe in Likutei Torah asks many times the question, Lama Yarda Neshama L'Soich Haguf, right? Neshama, before the neshama comes down into the body, so the neshama is sitting in the Oitzer, and neshama is in Gan Eden. What's the neshama is doing in Gan Eden? Nenin Mizivashchina. It's a Gaval's Moedik. It's an enjoyable place, an enjoyable environment for the neshama. The Eibishter takes the neshama out of Gan Eden and puts it down in this world. Why? For what purpose? Only because the neshama's got a task to be in Olam Hazeh, and to be Mekayim Torah Mitzvahs in Olam Hazeh. And by being Mekayim Torah Mitzvahs in Olam Hazeh, it can accomplish way more than the neshama while it is in Gan Eden. So the purpose is to be here in this world, and like we make the bracha, and every time we do a mitzvah, Mekayim a mitzvah, we make the bracha, Asher Kidshanu b'mitzvos v'tzivanu. Those mitzvahs we can only accomplish in contact with in Olam Hazeh. Once the neshama has finished its task in this world, Mesim Chafshi min mitzvahs, right? No longer do you have the potential, the ability to collect and acquire that connection of Asher Kidshanu b'mitzvos v'tzivanu. So there's an element of kedusha, not with prisha from Olam Hazeh, but there's an element of kedusha which is bedafka having in contact with the Metzius of Olam Hazeh. But to have contact with your surroundings in Olam Hazeh, but to have so with the correct kavanah, with the correct intent, with the correct approach, to when you eat, to make a bracha before, to make a bracha after, then the Olam Hazeh becomes part of your Avodas Hashem. And it's interesting, the Rambam in Hilchas Deis, and I'll quote you what the Rambam writes about this. So the Rambam,
Kedoshim is one of the Taryag mitzvahs.
So it's a mitzvah klalis. It's a mitzvah klalis. It's a question whether it's counted, and you can count that in as a. So the Rambam writes in Hilchas Deis like this: Hamahalech b'derech zu kol yomav. Someone who, with every contact that he has in this world, has in mind that he's doing so as a chelik of his avodas Hashem. He's oived as Hashem tomid. Afilu b'shasha noisav noisim, when he's in work doing commerce. Afilu b'shasha boil mipnei shemachshav toy. But koil, his thoughts are kedei sheyimtze tzrachav ad sheyeh gufay shalom la'avodas Hashem. His whole purpose is to serve Hashem with everything, all his contact that he has in this world. If a person goes to sleep, he should be rested. He shouldn't get sick. You can't serve the Eibush if you're sick. He's sleeping. And this is the Baal Shem Tov says a very interesting taich in a pasuk in Tehillim. So David HaMelech in Tehillim says that says Re'evim gam tzemeim nafsham bahem tisatov. What does that mean? A person is thirsty and he wants to take a drink. A person is hungry, he wants to take some food. So he thinks it's to satiate his body. No. Says David HaMelech, nafsham behem tisatov. There is his nefesh is wrapped inside his body. Really, who's hungry and who's thirsty? It's his neshama that wants to be able to utilize this davar gashmi for avodas Hashem. And therefore, when he takes a drink and he makes a bracha, shaknei devara, and a burden of fashas rabbis afterwards, so who got satiated? Well, the body, consciously, the body has been satisfied. But in the subconscious, what's going on over here is nafsham behem tisatov. It's really his nefesh which is being satiated as part of its avodas Hashem. It was a tremendous ma'isa. The Baal Shem Tov used to travel around to all the little shtetla to be ma'oided a lot of the simple people to avodas Hashem, and a lot of them felt dejected by the Talmid Chacham in those times. They were looked down upon, and they were distant from having connection with the Talmid Chachamim. But the Baal Shem Tov encouraged them: if you can say a pasuk Tillim, say Tillim. You can't learn Torah. You would never have the schus to learn Torah. But if you can read Tillim, say Tillim. If you can thank the Eibishter, say Baruch Hashem from something that the Eibishter does good. He gave you health, and you say Baruch Hashem. So that alone is a tremendous gift that you have to do all you can for the service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Once the Baal Shem Tov walks into Beis Medrash, to a shul, and some of the shuls they used to have a second room, which was called Cheder HaPerushim. There were people who were hermits who used to cut themselves off from any connection whatsoever from Dvarim Gashmin. They were called a Parush. They were very holy people who they fasted the whole day. They learned this Parush. Baal Shem Tov watched him. In the morning, he gets up very early, tikkun chatzos, and then he learns until shachris, and comes shachris, he davens, and then he sits and learns a whole day till mincha. Then between mincha ma'ariv, he learns weiter. After ma'ariv, his wife comes and brings him a dry piece of bread and a glass of water, and he eats it and drinks the water, and then he says krishma shalamita and goes to lie down on a wooden bench in the Parush room, and so that's the cycle of his day. Of course, he had no connection whatsoever to the outside world. Davening, limud ha'Torah, and paspa melach toichel ma'im says tishrei. This was his. So the Baal Shem Tov walked into him and he asked him. He says, "I don't understand." Says, "Tell me." He says, the Baal Shem Tov asks him. He says, "Tell me, how's your health?" The guy looks at him blank. He says, "The food you ate today, did you enjoy? Was it good?" Looks at him. He says, "It's spring outside. Good, nice weather. Did you get a chance to take in some of the flores haboira?" The guy looks at him like, "Don't you know that this is just not my life? If you asked me if I had the geschmack of pshat and toisves, if I had the geschmack, what's called a chiddush, the shtickle gemara, we're on the same wavelength. You're asking me about my food and the weather. This has got nothing to do." So the Baal Shem Tov told him, he says, "You're stealing HaKadosh Baruch Hu's parnasa." What's that? What do you mean I'm stealing HaKadosh Baruch Hu's parnasa? So Baal Shem Tov says It says in Tehillim, Ba'ata Kadosh Yoshev Tehillas Yisrael. What does that mean? That you, Ata Kadosh, you, the Rebbeinu Shalom, Yoshev, you sit and wait for Tehillas Yisrael, for the praise that Bnei Yisrael say when you ask them about the Dvarim Gashmim, the gifts the Rebbeinu Shalom gave you, and you ask them, how was your food today? And they answer, Baruch Hashem, it was good. How's your health today? Baruch Hashem, good. What did you enjoy in this world? And they say, Baruch Hashem, good. The Eivishter waits to hear praise of Bnei Yisrael for the gifts that Rebbeinu Shalom gave us. Gashmistic gifts in this world. And if we use it out and we acknowledge these are gifts from the Rebbeinu Shalom, we say, Baruch Hashem, this is what the Eivishter is waiting for. So the second level, the one level of kedusha is taka, like surmeida. In other words, not to be too engaged, too involved, not to be farzunken in tanuga olam hazeh. But that's only a beginning part. The next phase is to recognize that these are all gifts and attributes that Rebbeinu Shalom gave us, and to use it out to its fullest. And it's very interesting. There's a Torah of the Maggid. The Yosef Tzadik's brothers, they came down to Mitzrayim and they didn't recognize Yosef. So, pshat, why didn't they recognize Yosef? They didn't recognize Yosef because it was 30 odd years later. They left him, when they sold him, he was a lad, fully grown, with a beard and everything, so they didn't recognize him. But there was more to it. What was more to it is the brothers were all shepherds. Shvatim were all shepherds. What was the life of a shepherd? The life of a shepherd is that you take the sheep out into the field, you let it pasture, and you have hours and hours a day to sit behisboidedus, to be cut off from the tzias of olam hazeh, and to connect and meditate on the Roivim Mosakel. Right? That was their life. And here they see Yosef HaTzadik, who's involved. He's running a country. He's involved in commerce. He's involved in everything that is to them not sacred. And they thought, this is not one of our brothers. They were lohikas Yosef, not just because they didn't recognize his face. The whole lifestyle of Yosef was something that they didn't recognize. But this was the name of Yosef is because Yosef Hashem li bein achar. The idea Yosef was the one who engaged in olam hazeh and was an ambassador of kedusha to olam hazeh. In other words, and that's the second level of kedusha, of kedoshim tiyu ki kadosh ani, not just to be detached from the chizudai alma, but to be ambassadors of kedusha to olam hazeh. In a practical way, one of the ways to do that is, so we know that the Gemara Baba Basra says that Rebbe Lezer, before he used to go to daven, he used to give tzedakah. Why did he used to give tzedakah before he'd go to daven? So he'd quote the pasuk, "Va'ani b'tzedek echze ponecha." I'm coming to meet the Eibishter. I come first with tzedakah. So whenever he used to go to daven, before he started open the siddur to daven, he put a coin in the pushka. "Va'ani b'tzedek echze ponecha." This is my way of greeting you, Rebbeinu Shalom, with the tzedakah. So if a person wants to sanctify his a day that the person spends in the office and commerce and it's backwards and forwards and it's we don't always recognize the Rebbeinu Shalom minute by minute in the office, but if you have a tzedakah pushka on your desk and you walk into the office in the morning and you start the day by putting a coin in a pushka and the v'ani b'tzedek echsa ponecha, recognizing that my day is to sanctify the Rebbeinu Shalom. This is Kedoshim Tiyu Ki Kadosh Ani. Just to conclude with a tremendous maisa, the Kedusha of mitzvahs maisias. So there was in Bnei Brak, there was after the war, there was someone who got together a kehillah of the Hungarians, all the Hungarian people, the Sheda Sapleta, Chuk Sam Sofer, Rabbi Ungar, and in the kehila that he had. So one day someone comes over to him. He says, Rebbe, I have a shaila to ask you. He says, no, frag. He says, it's not a simple question. You got to hear the history. The Rebbe says, I lived through the lager, and it wasn't easy. I had a neighbor of mine the first year we were in the camp. It was a couple of months before Pesach, and he's nudging me that we got to have matzah. Come what may, we've got to have matzah. So we arranged together, he was the inspiration, but I was the one who did all the action. I went and I collected the wheat. I stole from the kitchen the wheat, and then I hid it in my my baguette. And one night, late at night, we ground it into flour, and then I hid it and I guarded it the best I could. And then it was going to be it's the week before Pesach. And I tell my shach, and I said, you know what? It says, I even arranged, 5 minutes away from the barracks. I arranged a place with a metal bin. We're going to light a fire there, and we're going to bake the matzah. We've got it all done. So I went with him, and we baked the matzah. And we came back, and we got caught by the guards. And the guards says, it's coming Pesach. They suspected something. They give me a full shakedown. They see the matzah falling out of begodim. So what did I do? The guy took me and he beat me. And I was left, this is a few days before Pesach, I was left, somewhere bein hachaim bein hamaves. Took me a few days to recover. I recovered, it was Erev Pesach in the afternoon, and I felt in my shirt something sharp. I feel in there, there's a chunk of matzah left. So I showed my neighbor, I said, we got a piece of matzah here left. Not a small piece, but we got a piece of matzah here left. So the guy says to me, he says, look, I know that you took the beating. You did all the hard work. You got the rough end of the stick. But please, let me eat the matzah. No. I say, anyhow, he didn't let up. It wasn't so easy. He says, but by the time it came, the time of the Leil HaSeder, that guy had convinced me, but I said one kavet. I says, you can eat the matzah, but the schar mitzvah goes to me. Oh, so that was the deal. That was the partnership. That was the deal. So this guy's now sitting in front of Reb Ungar. And he says, this is like 20 years since that event. And I had a dream last night. This guy came to me, the dream. And he says to me, you should know that this is, I know it's not nice for me, but this is 20 years I'm suffering that I gave up the schar of this one mitzvah eating matzah. He says, I'm begging you to give me back the schar of that eating matzah. So this Yid, 20 years in Gan Eden, what bothered him that he lost an opportunity to eat one piece of the schar? He ate it, but the schar, one piece of matzah. This what bothered him, that he made his way back down to try and. So he's asked Rabbi Ungar, says, well, "What should I do? Should I give him the schar mitzvah? Should I not give him the schar mitzvah?" So Rabbi Ungar says, "What do you mean?" He says, "Have a look." He says, "You were zoicha that this guy passed away in the camps. You was zoicha that you had 20 years of eating matzah since then. And Be'ez Hashem, you have many more years to be able to mekayim the mitzvah of achilas matzah. That one, give it to him, give him the schar of the matzah." But the lekach is the how precious it is, one mitzvah that you can accomplish in this world. How precious it is, the ability, the asher kidshonu b'mitzvosav. This is where we have the potential, and we should only be in this world be meyaker the opportunity, like like that, like will be meyaker b'bias Mashiach tzidkenu.
Very good. Very good. Relation to you. Happy you came.
No.
Showed me something.
How could it be?
Parshas of the Mishnah says, says Daber of Israel. But make sure you invite the Chaim. Had large part in the actual of the Mishkan, but it says, make sure there's a king. And that's what you guys brought down. My guy, my ruchnis. The importance of Zakanim, the importance of Rebbeim, the importance of Dafcheg. Not going to be you. Dan is gefrekt, sie me kent das Tom.
Well, that's the deal that you need.
Very closeness
Your
to
job
the
is
bunch
exactly
like
the deal.
what's that? The
We
kavosam,
say it in a different
hat mich
way.
gefragt, sie ich mir gehangen. Then the Shifte Ko, the Shifte Ko, gefragt, was wir soll tun mit Josef? Haben sie nicht gefragt, der Jakob? Hat nicht gefragt. Sie haben getan allein. And them as up Zakanim, you have to ask Zakanim, ask those people that you can get an answer from properly.
It's the time. If you have time by not eating, that's your time too. But I'm assuming you can't be ice at Pesach here.
Like the Lubavitch shal shudis.
Right, that's what I thought. Not enjoying by not eating.
Jenny Heat had gebeten, is gegessen nog, en hij wil hem de schaal ook. Beide zeggen, wat is kijk, je want to eat it. There's one time where, those are the times where my father's behind the fucker.
No, but you think about it. If this neshomo is coming down, why would you give that up? He's done. Yeah, but why would I? But look at that one mitzvah. Look at the power of that one mitzvah.
It's not, no, if
It's not that he never ate matzah before. This is like he never ate matzah. He never ate matzah. It's not like he never ate matzah before. That
so
one.
he had, no, the
So now
problem
this
was.
fellow who's alive is going to have scar for every year except for that 1 year. He wants to have a whole.
He has something incomplete.
That's why it says-
Physical component that's missing. It's not like he came down, do me a favor, learn from me. He didn't say that to him because he was missing here. He gave something wrong. He really should have been his. He negotiated, because the physical without the ruch, that's the point.
I know that you hear us that I have it on my wall. It's for the Shabbos. I read it in the book that what's his name gives out and made it a Shabbos. It's beautiful you hear us and you say. It reminds you that you have a parent that's not alive anymore, is not here and is all carried out. Right? The lesson of this of the Yerusim is that the smear of my or the mice is favoring, and this is what they do. You should go to the right? My brother asked me when we found it. He goes, "Who says that's the right thing to do? Give your schar up."
Yeah. That's
Mention Oz Yashir. So Rashi says that this is the So what's that? What's that by
He says that
Krias Yamsuf should be a zeicher for loss of love. So
you're doing.
Rebbe's mouths were like this. It's a tremendous word.
I thought it was a beautiful year.
The Yidden till Krias Yamsuf had a Hatzalah. Hatzalah Purta, Nissim, tremendous Nissim.
Whatever it's the right thing to do.
It was all wonderful. They weren't over yet. The Mitzvah was still right of Achreim. They weren't over. But Hatzalah Purta is also Hatzalah.
It's almost automatic. This is just
Moshe Rabbeinu saw by Krias Yamsuf was
you're not giving up.
that the Eibush Zazak Guta, that the Eibush is not satisfied giving the Yidden Hatzalah Purta. The Eibush wants Tachlis HaToy for Bnei Yisrael. He wants that the Yidden go out of Mitzrayim, rid of Paris Legamri. Says, oh, he wants Tachlis HaToy. He's Oz Yosha Moshe is going to be the. This is the time of what's called.
Get a chance to
Why should you any retail store? Would you like to donate the thing?
Yeah.
I said,
Donate, that's tap. See now? $2 tap.
Yeah.
Shane
Mendel's,
As a
Yeah.
chav. $2.
I said, you give $2 for what I
So
just
where was
gave.
your mother from originally?
I know, I'm
Would you
upset.
like to give it? No, I wouldn't have
Vinny, you see, the charity store right here.
Family from before. They met my father was much older. They met in Velde, I think, after the time. So forth.
What's all some vision? It's I was wondering where the name Menachem Mendel comes from.
You know,
Has to be vision.
The same city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's younger than us.
yeah.
Although my father from had a very, very close connection to.
Just get the nice house. He was more than used, not.
Because he went to the Rebbe not once.
Yeah.
Mainly on the alle Chabadskers zijn gekomen to the
Next
Rebbe.
door to, yeah.
That's how
We're both
all zijn kat ook.
one over, right?
All right.
Yeah, one for one.
To me, the table.
Most to stuff.
I gotta go.
Correct, right?
Thank you very much for coming on. Last minute, once again, I want to thank Rabbi Gorman for last minute. There's no such thing as last minute, right? Thank you.
The mitzvah, the badei aron, you can't remove the badei aron. Yes, there's a mitzvah, you can't remove the badei aron. Wasepas, all the other kelim you can remove the poles. Wasepas, the badei aron, you can't move. So the Rebbe's masber is that the aron always has to be ready to be transported.
Give me a moment's
At
notice.
a moment's notice, that pop epis toida to shet another yid.
The Ramban's shot of Novel Bishop Satir is really the first shot in Kedoshim.
Yeah.
That's the removal.
Yeah.
But you can also say it's the second one. By having less, you can still have them more. You don't have to.
This is days. There was always this approach. Also, Hiskapia was a big avoida, and there's famous words of Chassidim. They brought down Yom. Was man tarnished, was man meg, darf man euch nicht. You know. So of course that's one angle. One angle. The other angle is way.
It's hard. This makes it one. I should.
It's al derech. What's called? It's al derech Shabbos. So in Shabbos, there's two elements in Shabbos, right? There's not doing a malacha, but then there's another whole element of Shabbos. The Shabbos has to be a Yom Kodesh. There's the shlili. There's shikiboy Shabbos mikol malachtoi. But then there is the Bo Shabbos Bo Menucha special matana the Eibishter gave the Yidden. So there's two sides to it, right?
Shlomi, thank you.
And Surmada always
Comes
comes.
to mention your fathers on Monday. Should have another shir then.
Surmada always comes first because you can't really engage in step 2 if you don't have a little bit of step 1. You can't engage in that step 2 properly. Someone who's shakua ba'olam hazeh can't really be engaged in olam hazeh for the tzarech of avodas Hashem. So it's a step 1 before step 2 always.
Dus is dat weglijken? Die is dus weglijken?
We'll put
Okay.
it in this,
Dus dan.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next pasje is de nefesh loy hamabamam, ja?
Emor.
Emor, ja?
Ja.
Zijn de nefesh. Staat je de nefesh loy hamas a grashi. Shas ha-mesis. Wat ze koopt, only allowed to